of, thank you, Ty. Okay, I'll start over. I will call this regular meeting of the Kent Planning and Zoning Commission, Thursday, June 8, 2023 to order at 7:02. And I will read a couple of quick instructions. This is a public meeting which will be audio and video recorded just like every other Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Applicants will be asked to present and answer questions pertaining to their applications, and members of the public will be allowed to speak during public hearings. To ensure sound quality, the default rule for this meeting is that everyone will remain on mute. Commissioners and staff will generally remain on mute except when speaking or voting, and will generally keep video of themselves on throughout the meeting. Applicants and members of the public should feel free to leave their video on or off. However, they will be asked to turn their video on when speaking. And when speaking, applicants and members of the public will state their names for the record. I'll have some additional rules when we reopen the public hearing in a few minutes. But for now, I will elevate Annie and Anthony to voting status for the meeting, and we'll see how it we manage as the other members join, if they do. We're expecting both Daryl and Wes, and that gives us 6 voting members for now. Okay, that's just to finalize the roll call. We've got myself and Alice and Karen and Shelby, the regular members, and Annie and Anthony as alternates who have both been elevated to voting status. Anthony, welcome. I said hi just before we started the meeting, but Anthony is our newest alternate member. So welcome.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to move right into the beginning of the heart of the meeting and start with the approval of the minutes. So I would look for a motion to accept the May 11, 2023 regular meeting minutes.
Matt, this is Alice. I move that we accept the regular meeting minutes of May 11th, 2023.
Thanks, Alice.
I'll second that motion, Matt.
Thanks, Karen. So I have a couple of quick comments, and only one is really important. One I think is a typo, but on page 4, under 5B2, in the first motion that we made, I think the final sentence in the 3rd paragraph under 5B2, or the 4th if you count the first one, says the motion failed with 3 ayes, 1 abstention, and 2 nays. I think that should read the motion failed with 3 ayes and 3 nays. So if you, Ty and Donna, would go back and just double check the record on that and let me know whether that's right.
Which one are you talking about, the special meeting or the regular meeting?
I'm talking about the regular meeting of May 11.
Okay, so then I think you need to remove the motion to approve them, because that's what you just did. You move to approve them as presented. So I think you need to put your changes in first, then move to approve as amended.
I think we need to do something similar, Donna, but this can be an amended motion, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can amend the motion if you want to. Sometimes it's just cleaner to go ahead and remove the motion, withdraw the motion, make your changes, move to amend it. But it's just a recommendation for me so that I understand what I need to change in the minutes. So.
All right, I always thought that just as a point of order, I thought that we needed a motion to start the discussion.
No.
Okay. In any case, does the change that I'm talking about make sense to everybody? Because the motion really failed, and it can't fail with 3 ayes and 2 nays.
I think we should go back and look at it. Maybe table this for now.
Mhm.
That would be fine with me. Alice, would you agree that, to withdraw the
Ye-
motion then?
Yes, I withdraw the motion to accept the minutes of May 11th at the regular meeting.
Right. And Karen, that's up to you then to remove your second.
I will also remove my second.
Okay, so then let's table the approval of these minutes until our next regular meeting. And I would look for that motion.
So you need a motion. I make a motion that we table the approval of the minutes of the May 11th, 2023 regular meeting until our next meeting.
Thank you, Alice.
I will go ahead and second that.
Thanks, Karen. Then I'll call the vote. Then all those in favor, so signify by raising your hand and or saying aye. And Anthony, you'll need to vote too. Okay, great, thanks. And that motion carries then. I apologize for that. I will do a better job on the next set of minutes. Okay, so then I would, following Donna's advice, are there any comments regarding the minutes, the special meeting minutes from May 11, 2023? Okay, then hearing none, then I would look for a motion to approve those as written.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as written for the May 11th, 2023 special meeting.
Thanks, Alice.
I will go ahead and second that.
Thanks, Karen. Any more discussion? Then I'll call the vote. All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand and or saying aye. And that's the 6 of us. That motion carries. Thanks, everybody. And then again, following Donna's advice, are there any comments regarding the May 18, 2023 special meeting minutes? Then hearing none, I will look for a motion to approve those as written.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as written for the May 18th, 2023 special meeting.
Thanks, Alice.
I will second the motion.
Great. Thanks, Karen. Any further discussion? Then all those in favor, so signify by raising your hand and or saying aye. And great, that's the 6 of us and that motion carries. Annie, I see that you have your hand up. Is that are you?
I don't know how that got.
Okay, great. Then I'll keep calling on you intermittently just to make sure that that's still inadvertent. Okay, so then moving on to agenda item number 4, public comment, public communication oral. Is there anybody here in the audience, in the public, who's got any business in front of the commission that's not on the agenda? Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Then I will move on to agenda item 5, old business, and move into agenda item 5A, which is the 5A1, which is the application 43-23 SP and 44-23C, Cheryl Gould for Jason Dismukes, 147 Treasure Hill Road, map 17, block 32, lot 23, construction of a detached accessory dwelling unit. And the note here is that we should close the public hearing by June 15th, or the applicant can request an extension. So I will reopen the public hearing, and I will not reread the legal notice. And I will turn it over to Ty if she's got any staff report to.
Yep. So Mr. Dismukes came into the office and amended the application to include the waivers that had not been circled the last time. So 6, 10, 11, and 13, he's asking to be waived. And also he provided pictures of that shed that was in question, which is adorable, but it is indeed just the shed. It's not, it doesn't look like there's anything other than storage on the inside and a little porch on the outside. So I don't think that that's a conflict with regulations.
Okay, then I will turn it over to Mr. Dismukes to tell us anything that he'd like us to hear before we start asking questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, commissioners. Again, the application is to build a detached accessory dwelling unit. The property is approximately 7 acres. We have approval from Torrington Area Health for the septic system for the new dwelling. And I mean, that's really it. And we have inland wetlands approval as well.
Great, that answers a couple of my questions. So I think that I would open this up to the public now and wonder whether there's any comments from the public as part of the public hearing. Oh, sorry, let me say this, that while we're talking, we're asking the public for input. We would ask that that everybody be respectful and seek first to understand and then be understood, to listen carefully and don't interrupt, and please stay on topic. Speak for yourself and not for someone else. Understand that it's okay to disagree, but remember that this is a discussion and not a debate. Please be candid and avoid making assumptions, particularly about intentions and beliefs or motives of others. Okay, so any comments from members of the public? And you can, bring yourself, you can turn your video on or you can raise your virtual hand. And I don't see any public comment at the moment. We'll come back to that. Are there any questions from the members of the commission? Then I would ask for a further description from Mr. Dismukes about the tree removal and the visual impacts that we spoke about at our last meeting.
Okay, so let me see if I can share my screen. I believe what we determined, there's a small tree near the dwelling that's outside of the horizon line that would come down, but then there's one oak tree on the hillside that was in the horizon line, and that tree we will protect that tree. Let me see if I can share my screen here. I don't know if this is. Can you see that?
We can.
Yeah.
So the tree that I'm referring to is this 24-inch oak tree that is in the horizon line that we will save. And the tree that would go is the tree that's outside the horizon line, which is right close to the dwelling. So let me go to the next sheet where you can see the dwelling. This is the tree outside the horizon line. And then the tree inside it is up here on this hillside.
And the last time we talked, there was some question. I certainly had a question about the balance of the trees that were in that horizon line. And I know that you were careful to locate the guest house outside of the horizon line district.
Yeah.
But there was some
And-
question about the additional trees that might have to come out in order to do the grading for that road.
Well, the only tree that's really susceptible is the oak tree. The rest is more of an open meadow. And after we looked at it, we determined that we would be able to save the oak tree.
Just give me one moment. So, and I just want to be sure that I understand that oak tree that we're talking about that's within the horizon line district is going to be protected. I'm clear on that, but there's no other trees. It's just different than what I see on the satellite image, and it looks like there are other trees there. But if you're telling us that there are no other trees that are going to be removed within that horizon line district, then
No.
I'll take you at your testimony.
No, there's none.
Okay. There's no tree removals within the horizon line district, which would minimize the visual impacts, which we're required to review in the horizon line conservation district section of the regulations, 5700, specifically 5741.1 and 5743.1 and 5751A. We are also required to review regulation section 10.300, which I've done, and I don't see any other. I don't have any other questions for the applicant outside of the questions I've already asked. So I think, Mr. Dismukes, you can stop sharing your screen, and we
Okay.
can see what the balance of the commissioners have to say, if anything. Then I would, before we think about closing the public hearing, I would just like to have a quick conversation regarding the requested waivers, so that if we want to ask the applicant for any additional information, we can do that before we close the public hearing. And those waivers that are being requested, as Ty mentioned earlier, are number 6 from our checklist, which is the landscaping plan. Number 10 from our checklist, which is off-site information, including the location of buildings, parking areas, curb cuts, adjoining properties, including those across the street, traffic lights and controls, and public trees. Much of this isn't germane because of the location of the property. An impact analysis of the development upon water supply, storm drainage, sanitary sewers, traffic, scenic road impacted, site conditions, and our water, air, and noise pollution. And number 13 from our checklist, which has to do with applications for special permit for construction of more than 25 dwelling units. And this doesn't rise to that level of impact or development. So do any of the commissioners have anything that they would object to in terms of granting these waivers? Okay, hearing none, then I would look for a motion. Well, let me just one last time. Is there any members of the public who would wish to make a comment? And seeing none, then I would look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing. I guess I have to be a little, I guess I have to be a little more specific. The public hearing for this application, do I need to read out the application?
I don't think so, Alice. I think
Okay.
just moving to close the public hearing is sufficient.
All right.
And second,
I will second the motion
thank
to
you,
close the
Karen.
public hearing.
Any further discussion? And seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor so signify by raising your hand and or saying aye. And that's the 6 of us. Okay, so that motion carries. And then I'd like to move right into the discussion of the waivers and get that out of the way. So I would look for a motion to accept those waivers as discussed during the public hearing.
I move that we accept the waivers as discussed in the public hearing for applicant 4323 SP and 4423 C.
Thanks, Alice.
I will second the motion to accept the waivers.
All right, thanks, Karen. Any further discussion? Then seeing none, all those in favor so signify by raising your hand and or saying aye. All right, and that's the 6 of us. And then now for discussion on the actual, on the application in front of us. Is there, does anybody have anything else to say before we move to vote, make a motion, accept the application? Then hearing none, I would then look for a motion to accept applications 43-23 SP and 44-23 C. Cheryl Gould, Jason Disputes, 147 Treasure Hill Road, map 17, block 32, lot 23, construction of a detached accessory dwelling unit. Sorry, that's it. Construction of a detached accessory dwelling unit, period.
So moved.
Thanks, Annie.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Karen. And any further discussion on the motion? Then I would call the vote. All those in favor so signify by raising your hand and or saying aye. And that's the 6 of us, and that motion carries. Mr. Disputes, you can get in touch with Ty. She'll tell you what's going to happen after this. I think there's a waiting period, and then I think you are cleared to take off.
All right. Thank you very much for all of you. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Okay, so then I would move on to agenda item 5B. This is discussion and possible decision. 5B1 is the application for 33 Camps Road, and this application has been withdrawn. And there's nothing. Well, I don't think there's anything else for us to do except to accept the withdrawal of the application, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have a decision on that. You have to accept it. So, I mean, you don't have to, there's no option not to accept it. So it is what it is.
Okay, so I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions about this, and does anybody want to talk about it for a minute, or should we just move on and see what happens?
Let's move on.
Amen, Annie. Okay, so that's we'll wait to see what happens with that application, and then let's move on to agenda item 5B. I'm sorry, Shelby.
I was just wondering whether you expected a renewal application for this applicant, or are they just quitting?
I suspect that we're going to hear something back from the applicant. I don't think that it's going to be a renewal application, but I think it's going to be an objection to the previous approval. So we'll just, you know, they say that they're going to come back to us and talk to us in the future. I'm not quite sure what that looks like.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, agenda item number 5B2. And this is application 48-23C, Jacob and Alexandra Kling for Pete Hamby, or Pete Hamby for those for the applicant, 32 Spectacle Ridge Road, map 16, block 25, lot 36, screen porch, new pool, renovation of two-story house on the horizon line. And the note here is a decision by July 15th or a possible extension. So with that, I would ask Ty if she's got anything to add before we look to the applicant.
Yeah, just Pete came in this week with the additional information that the commission had requested. He sent he added the trees to the plan and also the lighting. He added a information regarding the proposed lighting. So I haven't received in the office a full size set of plans, so I was having a little hard time figuring out, but I'm sure Pete is here and he can walk us through exactly what trees have been identified.
Sure, and thanks everybody, and thanks Ty. I apologize about the full size set. I mistakenly was under the impression that I was to bring that in, you know, if and when approved for the record rather than prior. So I can bring that in tomorrow. But I will go ahead and share my screen. Let's see here. I'll start with the lights because they're pretty straightforward. This would be a typical wayfinding light that we have on the ground, and it's short. You know, it would be about 18 inches tall, and it has a cap on it, and it just projects the light downward. And it's a warm light. It's 2700 Kelvin, so it's not a bright white light. It's warm, and it's really just for finding your way at night through the landscape. And then the typical sconce that we would mount on the exterior of the building, and this would be in the areas of the house that are renovated, as well as the new addition. It would be black. It points downward only. Again, 2700 K, so it's a warm lamp. And it's just to illuminate the immediate area next to a door, etc. And that's it. That would be it for the exterior lighting specifications. And then I introduced the project a month ago, but just to re-summarize, existing house to be got renovated. Its septic system is sized for 5 bedrooms. Currently, the house has 4 bedrooms. We'll be converting some unused space into a 5th bedroom, not expanding the footprint beyond this new addition, which is a connector and a screen porch and a pool. The house is up on a ridge. The pool would be down a little bit off the ridge. And the trees to be impacted have been added to the survey. In total, there's 17 trees. They range in their diameter from 8 inches. At the low end, we have one of those. The biggest is a 16-inch. Most of them are around a foot. And I showed this picture last time. This is sort of the nature of the stand of trees. This is the area where the pool would be added. So this is what we're talking about. And, you know, for those who did not see it last week, for some more context, this is where the addition ties into the existing house. The ridge line of the proposed addition here, the screen porch, it's about 12 feet off the finished floor. The existing house is much taller. So for context, this is a section through the existing house. The highest point on the ridge in the existing house is 28 feet. So Matt, you had a question last week about, will this thing be taller than the existing house, and sort of add, you know, had be something that's looming on the hill beyond what's there now? And the answer is no, it would not. It would, the existing house would be above it. And the pool is down significantly from the finished floor level of the existing house. So the trees being removed are not at the top of the ridge, they're down the ridge. And to go back to the aerial image, it's a small stand of trees within a much larger area of trees. So, and it's not visible from public roads. So it wouldn't be creating a by any means sort of a sawtooth effect on the ridge line from the removal of the trees.
So that house is really, it's really right on the ridge, right? So you're driving up to the driveway goes up to the house, and then it's falling off the ridge is falling off to the back of that house where you're putting the pool.
Yeah, let me bring up the site plan for you, Matt.
And the question that one of the questions that we had last time was, you know, what can you see of that site from the roads to the south and to the east, and most notably, you know, Anderson Road or Cane Mountain Road or
Yeah.
Hollow.
Yep. So for context, here's Spectacle Ridge Road that ties into Anderson. And yes, you're driving up the hill as you approach, kind of come to a relatively flat area, and it begins to drop off, and then drops off precipitously right at the edge of, you know, drops off a little bit, and that's where the pool is in the trees, and then it drops off a lot more. But then it does continue to go up. The high point up here, there's a barn at the high point, an existing barn where it plateaus. And it also rises in the background behind the house. Looking out, if you were to stand here and look out, you would see Lake Warmog. Actually, you can see Lake Warmog from there. You cannot see any roads.
And conversely, we're not so worried about you guys being able to see the roads, but I'm worried about you.
Oh, well, I assume, I mean, yes, and yeah, just by not being able to see roads, if there is a road that can see, you know, if that's if that operates, you know, both ways, then I assume it wouldn't be visible from any roads. And I have a, here's a context map, just the aerial. Let me zoom in on this again.
Yeah.
With Anderson being over here. Here's the house. This is the area in question right here that we're talking. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Mhm.
This is the area in question that we're talking about right here.
Okay, I think I've got it. What, you showed us a picture, Pete, in the file, with the proposed pool and the proposed screen porch and connector superimposed on the plan. You know, it's the first of the two photos.
Yeah, yeah, of the aerial, yeah.
That's right. The footprint of the proposed screen porch is how big?
But you know, the area, let me go to just the let's see here, 575 square feet. That's the proposed addition.
And the pool, just in rough numbers on a square foot basis?
Let's see, it's the pool, well, the pool itself is 17 by 40. And then there's an equal amount roughly of patio adjacent to it.
So you're talking about 2,000 feet. And the wayfinding lighting is going to be around the pool, did you say?
Yeah, we would want to be able to, because you descend on your way down the pool, down the hill, on either side, whether you're walking through the grass or coming down some landscape steps. So we'd want to have a couple wayfinding lights on the way down, of those kind of mushroom cap lights. And yeah, we'd put a couple around the perimeter of the pool. Again, just for walking at nighttime, for footing. And that would be it.
I have a question on the lighting. How many is a couple?
You know, we don't have a finalized electric plan, but I'd say it would, in that area, I could imagine I'd say 4, possibly 6. I mean, they're yeah, and again, very small, you know, no uplighting, only pointing downward, only 20 inches off the ground.
Is that 4 or 6 on each side or total?
That would be I think we'd probably have now roughly 6 around the pool.
And Pete, the sconces on the renovated existing structure, will they roughly mimic what's there now? I know this, the style will be different, but the quantity?
Yeah, we would have them kind of, I mean, basically we'd have them as code requires. So we'd have to have them next to any doors. And then on the new construction, we would have also by doors and periodically around the perimeter. We're probably going to have what we would like to probably have is 4 on this side, probably 2 on this side. And again, that's really just for, you know, lighting the ground plane for walking around and you know, shielded sconces, not to uplight the building or wall wash the building.
And yeah, so we if it's it's a residential structure, we don't regulate lighting. We like to know what lighting is, but really the reason that we're asking these questions is because it's in the horizon line, and we want to be careful about the visual impact.
I understand.
Then why don't you stop sharing your screen for a moment, Pete, and
Mhm.
we'll see whether in a way I can see the other commissioners and see whether anybody else has any more questions. Annie, did your question get answered about the lighting around the pool?
It did. What backs up, Pete, to the
Mhm.
pool area? Is that just property?
Yes, it is. It's and on the back side beyond the patio, it's woods. And it continues down to Spectacle Ridge Road. The woods.
And it looks like from the satellite image that those woods, from the Spectacle Ridge side looking down onto South Spectacle, it's pretty wooded down to the road. And it also looks like it's pretty wooded all the way down to Cane Mountain Road and down to Anderson Road and to Upper Kent Hollow, except for that development that's happening on Upper Kent Hollow. Alice, any thoughts or questions or idea?
I have a question. It probably isn't, the description of the barn that's uphill from the house.
Yes.
Is that you access that barn off of Spectacle Road?
It's part of the property.
Oh, okay.
And it's accessed through their driveway. Yes.
Oh, okay, because that
yeah.
map looked like there was another driveway to it.
It's part of the same drive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Karen, any thoughts?
No, I think I'm okay. I do know that some of those properties can be seen on the ridgetop, during the winter. I was just trying to, in my head, think of where I see them. And I think it's near Anderson Acres horse farm there, or flower farm. And beginning of Beardsley Road, Alice, no?
Yes. Well, it was those two houses up there that you see that started the whole idea of a horizon
Yeah.
regulation. There are two that are very visible.
But I don't think this is one of them, is it? Or-
No, I don't think.
I can't imagine it would be. And again, I totally, I would agree with you. In the winter, it's a different story, but I've been up there year round and I haven't been able to see a place, again, I haven't been able to see a road. So if there is a road that you can see, I'm not aware of it, but you basically look out into it's a sea of trees. It's pretty wooded and it drops off.
Okay.
Shelby or Anthony, do you have any thoughts or comments?
I don't at this time.
Okay. So just to follow just to make sure that we're following the regulations and
Matt, I guess we should just ask about trees.
We should, and I think
Okay.
Pete, yeah, absolutely. Pete talked about the trees that he's
Right.
to come out. That's sort of why I was asking the questions about the square footage of the footprint of the new thing, of the new screen porch and the pool. And Pete, I think, has identified an 8-inch tree, a 13-inch tree, an 11, a 9, another 9, a 14, a 14, and another 14. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trees that are coming out, and they all fall under the threshold of the 24-inch DBH from our horizon line regulation, which leaves really the only question as to what the visual impact of that tree removal is. Pete, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you agree? That's my assessment of what you had, of your testimony.
None of the trees are over 24 inches. If you, sorry, pardon me for a second. I'm just looking at this survey with the trees. And the number. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, then I'll ask Ty, wetlands?
I don't. Trying to remember. Pete, was there wetlands on the property?
Nope.
Yeah, I don't
And
remember it as an issue.
Torrington Area Health, it's not expanding the septic system, right? It's not necessary.
We haven't, Matt, we have an application in with them. And I spoke with Kathy Weber about it. And I wanted to just have the application to be sure, but she didn't expect there to be any issues because it's a 5-bedroom system. And we're going to have 5 bedrooms, but she's going to be taking a look at it and we'll have something for me by Monday. But that's where we are with that.
I don't think that's a requirement of your approval. I don't think you have to hold it for that. That's separate.
Okay.
And then, so we talked about tree removal, talked about the visual impacts. I believe that we reviewed, as with the last application, regulation section 5700, specifically 5741.1 and 43.1 and 51A and 52A, 5760 and 10300, which deals with the special permit application. I believe that we've deliberated and reviewed all of the pertinent sections that we need to. There are waivers that have been requested that we should accept if the balance of the commission thinks that we're ready to do that. Well, then the waivers that have been requested, I think these are the most current waivers. Ty, will you correct me if I'm wrong, that that the applicant is looking for waivers to 6, 10, 11, 12, and 13?
Yep, that's what I have.
Okay. Great, then 6 is a landscaping plan. And these are enumerated in our, in the checklist for the application. So 6 is a landscaping plan, 10 is offsite information, including location of buildings, parking areas, curb cuts on adjoining properties. Number 11 is impact analysis of the development upon water supply, drainage, sanitary sewers. 12 is the location of stone walls. And 13 is applications with regard to applications involving construction of more than 25 dwelling units or 15 parking spaces or 20,000 square feet of gross floor area, and this doesn't rise to that level of development. So if there's no further discussion, I would look for a motion to accept those waivers, namely 6, 10, 11, 12, and 13.
I'll move to accept the waivers, but you'll have to tell me the numbers again. 6, 10,
11, 12, and 13.
11, 12, and 13.
That's them. Second.
I'll second.
Thanks, Annie. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Annie. Then any further discussion regarding the waivers, regarding the acceptance of the waivers? Then I'll call the vote. All those in favor so signify by raising your hand and or saying aye. And that is the 6 of us, and that motion carries. Thanks very much. And then with regard to the application itself, Ty, this is because this is in the Horizon Line district. If it were not a Horizon Line application, we would not be asking many of these questions, and we don't need to address the Torrington Area Health in the approval. Is that what I'm understanding?
Right, I mean, if he doesn't get health approval, he can't go forward with this project. It's as simple as that, but they're separate.
Okay, fine. So often we would include that as a condition of approval, but if we don't need to do it, then we won't.
Regulations don't call for it.
Okay, thanks. Then I think we're ready for a motion.
Matt, I'm still confused on the lighting. Did you say we don't regulate lighting?
Well, typically we don't regulate lighting on a residence, but because this is in the Horizon Line Conservation District, we would look to investigate the visual impacts of the development, and the visual impacts would include the lighting, and typically with the lighting we would insist upon or strongly suggest that the applicant use full cutoff lighting, so there's no light bleed, there's not uplighting, and we're preserving the night sky and the view. So typically in a Horizon Line application, we would ask to see the lighting cuts, the specification sheets, but probably not insist upon a number, that they limit the number of lighting to a certain level. Does that help?
Sort of.
So if we said that we're talking about,
I guess, how is lighting measured? I mean, is that lumens or?
it is measured by lumens. And there's typically, it's, the way the code works, the building code works, it's typically a minimum as opposed to a maximum amount of lighting. So we as a body are somewhat in conflict with the building code, which requires more light than we want. And I'm gonna just cruise through the horizon line regulations again, just to make sure that that I understand that I'm telling you the right thing.
There's a, I know there is a section that describes the type of lighting.
Yeah, it's 5741-3.
And that's where an activity is permitted by right in the horizon line. Fixtures which should not generally be expected to produce glare or light trespass. Level of illumination is the minimum illumination to accomplish its intended purpose. And such fixtures are installed and operate in accordance with section 8600 of these regulations. 600.
The 5744 mentions it again.
So 80 to 8600, if we follow that lead, we get to 8640, which says all exterior lights and sign illuminations. I'm sorry, that's for non-residential use. Lighting standard for residential uses. Located, installed, and directed in such a manner as to prevent glare or light trespass, employ soft transitional light levels from area to area, minimize contrast between light sources, lit areas and dark surroundings, and be confined within the target area.
I guess if everybody else is okay with it, I guess I'm okay with it too. But it just seems like a big pool for 4 lamps, lighting.
Yeah, we
Fixtures.
and we don't have our lighting layout plan yet. But we know those are the specs that we're going to use.
And ultimately that lighting plan, ultimately the installation of lighting will have to comply with the regulations. Any other thoughts? Then would you all like me to tee you up for the resolution, or does somebody want to propose a resolution?
I'll bring it up.
Or motion, I should call it, not a resolution.
Let's do it.
All right, so the language should be, I would look for a motion to approve application number 48-23C, Jacob and Alexandra King, Pete Hanby, 32 Spectacle Ridge Road, map 16, block 25, lot 36, screen porch, new pool renovation of 2-story house in the horizon line.
I'll make that motion, Matt. Do you want me to read it again?
No, I don't think that's necessary, Karen. Unless you want to practice.
No.
Okay, then I'll look for a second.
No second.
Second,
Great. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Alice. Any further discussion? Then hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand and are saying aye. And that is 5, and those opposed?
I think I'm going to abstain.
Okay, that's the third. So we've got 5 ayes and 1 abstention. And that motion carries. Okay, Pete, you'll get in touch with Ty. She'll let you know what the next steps are, and you're good to go. You
All
will
right.
be.
Thanks to everybody on the commission. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so on to new business. This is agenda item 6B1, which is the pre-application review. Keep yourselves on mute.
Sorry.
That's all right. So this is a pre-application review of the Landugan Family 2012 Trust. It's a 158 and 160 Ore Hill Road, map 18, block 33, lot 3. It's a 2-lot re-subdivision. We got a request for some information a couple of meetings ago. We responded with some information back to the pre-applicant at our last meeting, and now that was sort of a pre-application review, and now we're looking at the pre-application review, which is something that we encourage as part of the new subdivision application. And I would ask Ty if you want to talk us through your staff report first before we ask the applicant to talk to us.
Yeah, sure. So if you guys remember, in October of 2019, you had approved an accessory dwelling unit for this property. And kind of this is what triggered this whole thing. There's no real construction proposed. It's just that by way of approving that accessory dwelling unit, there was another accessory dwelling unit on the property at the time. And you made them take out the kitchen as a condition of that approval. So now they'd like to re-implement the use of that previously existing accessory dwelling unit and restore the kitchen to it. But by doing that, they can't, because they'll have 2 accessory dwelling units and a main unit on one piece of property. So what they need to do is divide the property. It's part of a previous subdivision, so now it's a re-subdivision. So they've been to Torrington Area Health Department, and that has been approved. They've been to wetlands, and that has been approved. I kind of went through all the criteria at this meeting. You know, most of the stuff they've satisfied. There's a couple things that you as a commission should give the applicant a direction as to whether you want to waive, like the soil conservation report on 463, 465 is the environmental or hydrological study. So you can make those decisions, you know, whether you want to waive those or not. For the actual application, the applicant will have to provide some kind of statement saying they considered the passive solar energy. And it will definitely have to go to public hearing because it's a re-subdivision. You can't waive that. And also it'll need to be referred to the COG because it's on the New Milford border. I think Brian Neff is here. I think the attorney for the applicant is here as well. I think Peter Talbot is here for this. And I think even the applicant is here. So there's quite a few people here for this application.
It's great. The more the merrier. The more information we got, the better. So, Brian, I think if you want to take the lead for the applicant, or if that's not appropriate, just it's whoever wants to jump in.
No, that's fine. I'm certainly pretty well versed with the plan. I drew up the site development plan for the project. I designed all the septic systems for the buildings that are there on the site. So we've been working towards getting an application together for the re-subdivision. Been through a couple of things already. I had a couple of kind of procedural questions regarding the property itself. There is a section of Horizon Zone on the property, which normally entails a public hearing. Now, this subdivision is a little bit different than most. Usually I'm presenting information regarding future construction on a subdivision of dwelling unit, septic system, well, driveway. In this case, everything has actually been built on the site. Currently, the main house is at 160 Ore Hill, very close to the road. It's the older house that's there. The accessory dwelling unit is at 158 Ore Hill. It's got its own individual driveway, its own well, its own septic. So all those things have actually been done in the past. As far as doing the subdivision, the re-subdivision itself, there's no construction work required to complete anything on the site, which is kind of unusual. I'm just kind of wondering in terms of procedure, if there's no tree cutting proposed, no disturbance proposed of the Horizon Zone, does that still require a public hearing and so forth that it goes along with that? I'm just not clear about that.
I believe that 5722 addresses and states that no additional approval under this section, under section 5700 with this, which is this section, shall be required for any activity occurring outside the Horizon Line Conservation District, regardless of whether other portions of the same lot are located within the district. So if we take the map that you provided, where you identify the Horizon Line District, which is down gradient of both, down gradient of any activity, I think the answer is no. I would look for confirmation of that by Ty first, and then a sort of a consensus of the commission.
Right, I concur. I don't see why it would have to be subject. There's no activity.
So that's, I think, answer number one, Brian.
Okay, yeah, it's a very unusual subdivision in the fact that all the work has actually already been done. So there'd be no construction activities anywhere on the site to go along with the subdivision, which is extremely rare for that to occur. So, I mean, we can, if need be, we could certainly go to a public hearing for this. I just had a question about whether that would be required or not. Just kind of this, because it's an unusual case in terms of the lack of any kind of site work.
Well, I think, as Ty mentioned, I think because it's a re-subdivision, I think that we don't have a choice. I think we have to go to public hearing, but we don't have to go to public hearing for the Horizon Line issue.
Okay, yeah, that was my question about the Horizon Line.
Yeah.
So in terms of the overall plan, the lots would be divided into two parcels. We are showing a proposed conservation easement on the property. And in terms of that easement, there is property over in the town of Milford that's adjacent to the property line, adjacent to this property. It's owned by the Landrigan family. And they have existing 3 conservation easements, 3 different parcels on that property. One of them touches the area that we've proposed as part of this conservation easement area. It's actually on the far northern end of the property, right along the Milford town line. So we've identified that there is an easement adjacent to that from the Northwest Connecticut Land Conservancy. So the thought is that we'd be contacting that organization for confirmation of a conservation easement on the area shown as proposed open space. Every town looks at these things a little bit different in terms of procedures. We can contact the Land Conservancy to get some kind of agreement on potentially going forward with the conservation easement. If that would, the kind of thing would be acceptable to the commission.
Ryan, do you want to show what the where this is? I mean, just in a big picture, because we've basically gone from 8-acre parcel with 2 houses and this guest house, Peter Talbot, architect, to 23 acres. And it's all within the family. I know you all had discussed the issue about the fact that it's a family trust, that that can't be waived, but it's all within the family, and they're protecting the land and trying to run a farm and have a cottage for a farmer and caretaker on the property. So that's the reason we're sort of jumping through these hoops. And I don't know if there's, do you want to share that, or do you want me to share that overall, Brian, or do you think that's not required?
Ty, can you put that up on the screen? I don't really have a connection to the screen at the moment.
Give me a second.
So you're talking about the overall plan shown on the site development sheet 1, R2, 1, right? That shows the
Yeah, one's the best.
subdivision, the conservation easement. So with regard to that, while Ty is working, the hatched area, the single line hatched area shown on the inset, it's labeled site. That's somewhat amorphous with what looks like I call it an in-holding, but it's not really. Is everything that's that single line hatched there, that's part of this parcel, or are we showing 2 separate parcels here?
It's all one parcel currently. There's a very small connection between the north and south section, but they are connected.
That's what it looked like to me. And then after the subdivision, you're going to have this north section, which is the lot 2 at 7.68 acres. And you're going to have the lot number 1 at 18.29, which includes that the piece that's going to have the conservation easement. Yes.
Correct.
But I just want to make sure that I understand the comment that you made, Brian, about the other open space. Is that contiguous to this piece, but just on separate parcels?
It is. It's right along the New Milford town lines toward the bottom of the plan. That's where the Kent New Milford town line is, right along that line at the bottom. And there is an adjoining property by the Landrigan family that does have a conservation easement on that particular property. So there is some connection there between an existing conservation easement and this at least proposed open space area that we're looking at right now.
But it is somewhat contiguous on that other piece of parcel, or is it's separated by some non-protected land?
No, it's contiguous. It's not contiguous for the whole boundary along the line, maybe about halfway. It does have a connection.
Brian, can I share that?
Sure.
Ty, can I share the screen for a minute?
Yep, go ahead.
If I can figure out how to do it. Oops. Do you see a Northwest Conservation easement map? Does everyone see that?
We see a map that says Northwest Connecticut Land Conservancy on the top left.
Okay, so the parcel that we're looking at, this, I know it's a very hard to sort of read exactly, but this is Orr Hill. Do you see my cursor?
Sure.
Mhm.
And Treasure Hill turning into Burnett, and here's the Kent town line.
Yeah.
The parcel that we're talking about that currently is one big piece. And at the last meeting, you determined this 12 acres, everything in green, this red line, is owned by the Landrigan family. And they basically, this in silver here is the portion that has been determined as open space, and it would be accessed off of this drive from Burnett. And all of this, these 3 lots here in yellow, are on the Landrigan land that are open space, protected open space. And the goal is that this would become the house, the property 160 with the house and the cottage, and 158 with the son's house, so the parents and the son. And just as a little bit of history on this, they started with this 8 acres that had the main house and the cottage on it. Their son built a house on that same property. But in the meantime, before 2012, they had acquired 4 additional parcels. So they had the 12 across the street, the main house with the guest house on it, with the kitchen taken out of the cottage, and then a little piece between where Orr Hill used to be, another piece here, and then a bigger piece here, which has now all been merged into one piece. So this 23 acres that includes 4 of those parcels is now 23 acres. And we're looking to take that into, make it these 2 pieces, so legally we can turn the farmer's cottage, caretaker cottage, back into into what it was, so they can run the farm on the property. So there's no, their intent is to preserve land. And I had hoped that we could eliminate this requirement for this open space, just because there's quite a lot of, involvement in creating open space and all the easements that go with that. But I guess Zitska had determined it's required because it's between a trust, not between individuals. So that's the big picture. I leave it back to I'll turn this off and go back to Brian.
Thanks, Peter.
So,
Good explanation.
yeah, thanks. I think we understood most of that. But now you've certainly answered the question about that roughly ½ acre and how it's going to be, how it relates to other protected land already. And Brian, we're okay if you can come up with an agreement with the Land Conservancy, that would be great. The other option you have is to, per the regulations, you can establish a homeowners association and manage it that way, but it's probably easier. However you guys want to do it is fine with us.
Well, I mean, the desire of the owners would be, because they're gonna basically give this property, even though it's in a trust, to their son. So it's really a conveyance to a direct family member, which normally gives you an out for doing conservation easement. But as Peter was saying, town attorney, town of Kent, believes that because it's in a trust, that doesn't work in this case. So kind of the fallback position is to do the conservation easement as something pretty straightforward and connecting to other conservation area that's adjacent into Milford. So, we're kind of going in that direction unless we change something around in terms of the ownership, which is up to the owners on that.
Yeah, and I understand all of that from the discussions that we've had the last couple of meetings, and
Yeah.
and I understand the initial question, and I understand the response from the attorney, and then the response from your attorneys, and we will follow the advice of our attorney, and as of right now, without a change in ownership and dissolving the trust and all of that, we would. And I know this is a pre-application discussion, but we would like to see open space because we think that that's on advice of our attorney, that's what is appropriate here.
Right. Okay, so that's, it makes sense. I mean, I think this is a pretty straightforward kind of a subdivision application. I've never really worked on one that didn't have to have any construction, so it's kind of unusual. Which should make this a little bit easier, I think, in terms of review and things of that sort. But we will, we'll put our information together to make an application, maybe the next meeting, to get that in, which then you can schedule a public hearing and kind of go forward with the procedural stuff on this. Is there any questions from any of the commission members that I can answer, just on a preliminary basis? I know we'll go through this at the public hearing, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that somebody might have in the meantime.
There are definitely a couple of things that Ty wanted us to answer for you before we moved on, and I think that the first one was was understanding what we might waive in terms of information around the application.
But we'll fill out the regular list, regular checklist of information, and with a cover letter noting which sections we would request to be waived. To go along with that, on the plans I drew up, I just showed 10-foot contours, elevation contours, which I thought was reasonable based on the fact that there's going to be no excavation work on the site related to the subdivision. So, I'd like to write up a little bit of a cover letter with a checklist to explain just a short reasoning behind the requests of each one that we make, and submit that as part of the application.
I think that would be great. It's preliminarily, I think that's, without construction or really any land disturbance, I think the 10-foot contours are reasonable. I think that that the formal soils report probably isn't warranted, but a description of the types of soils on site, maybe from past septic system design information, would be sufficient for us.
Yeah, I did include the NRCS soils on the plan that I put together. They have an overlay of soils. I did put that on there. A little chart noting which
Information in
soils
yellow,
are on
right?
each lot.
Okay.
And there's a little bit of wetlands on one corner of the property, which has been reviewed by the Wetlands Commission. They had no problem with proving this based upon like non-disturbance of anything in the area. So we're trying to cover the soil basis on this also. But whatever we do for the checklist, I'll write up at least a little sentence explaining why we request a waiver of specific parts of the requirements.
In general, though, Brian, I mean, we're looking, as you look at the checklist, it's since it all pre-exists, I mean, you're not looking for architectural plans, you're not looking for landscaping. I mean, right? I mean, it's been approved. So are we, just so that we move this, the procedure is that it goes next to a received, and then it goes to a public hearing. So anyway, it just seems like there's reading through that checklist, there's just not, it seems like just really the first 4 items or 5 items are the ones that need to be shown.
Which I generally agree with that. I really like Brian's idea of giving us an indication of why leading us down the road of why
Yeah,
why
yeah.
we need to see it, right? So it's.
I'm
I think
totally.
that's the right way to go.
I just thought if there was something where you knew that was because it's a pre-application, if you knew that you really were going to want one of these things, it'd be great to know, but okay.
Now, let me just ask one more question related to the conservation easement area. Would the commission be looking for some kind of a letter of intent on acceptance of a conservation easement from the conservation organization in terms of approval? No, it says handled different ways in different towns.
Yeah.
I think we would be looking for that before we could close the public hearing, right? So maybe not
Okay.
with the initial application, if you couldn't get that together before our next meeting, when I know you want to, I know you're looking to apply before or at the July meeting. So
Okay,
but I think we
as
don't need.
long as we have it for the public hearing, basically.
And
We'll
before.
get
we
it
close
before the public hearing. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
that makes sense, right, Ty?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
I know that you all know that at our July meeting, we're going to be talking about a moratorium on subdivisions. And it makes sense to well, it's,
Yeah, we'd like to get that in ahead of time. This is a pretty straightforward application, much more so than usual. So we'd like to get that in as soon as we can to get on the, before you declare the moratorium if possible.
I didn't want those words to come out of my mouth, Brian, but that's exactly. That's
But
exactly.
we also are going to need, I mean, the whole purpose for this is to come back for to reestablish this cottage that once was a dwelling unit back as a dwelling unit. I mean, it's a whole reason for going through this process. So we'd like to be able to submit for that special permit as soon as possible. Ty brought up the referral to COG. What's involved in that? I mean, is that something that we can get there sooner than later and that doesn't take a long process, or?
It's traditionally 35 days you have to, prior to the public hearing to get a request to the COG for referral. So as soon as the application is received, I'll send out that request for referral. It's only because you're on the New Milford line there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be required. So it could be a problem with starting the public hearing, depending on if we have that 35 days or not. But it's not a problem for the receipt of the application prior to the moratorium, if that's what the concern is.
Okay.
Would the submittal of COG be done right after the application is submitted to the office, or would you have to wait to the public hearing to authorize that?
It doesn't say anything in the regulations about having to wait for it, so I would get on it immediately.
Okay.
And, send your application directly to them. It's both, the Northwest COG and the West COG, so we have two that we have to deal with, but they have 35 days to respond to us. So we'll
Okay.
just see how it all comes together.
Well, should we submit that and just send you a copy of it for informational
think-
purposes? To make it go a little faster?
Well, I think it needs to come from the land use office.
Okay,
But the commission themselves are asking for the referral, not you. So
right, okay,
I'll
That's
send
fine.
it. As soon as I get it, I'll send it.
okay. Okay, great, thank you. I can't think of any other questions. Peter, do you have anything else?
No, it's an interesting process to observe. And I just can only say that I think you got some owners here who really are trying to do the right thing for the community and for farming and for open space, but
Does anybody, and does any members of the commission have anything that they, any advice or any direction that they'd like to give to the pre-applicants, so that they are prepared when they come in next month with their application? I can't see anything in the regulation that we haven't talked about that I personally would need to see, if that helps.
so if somehow this trust was able to be changed and we have it's individuals, then the open space is just gone. Is that you can waive that?
Once, if that's the direction that you wanted to go, we would need, it's as we said at our last meeting, we were asked a very specific question. We asked that question of our attorney. We got a response to that very specific question, and we presented that back to your attorney. And at which time your attorney told us that you had changed your mind and maybe we're going to do something different. We didn't go back to our attorney to ask what his opinion was about that different direction. So if that's what you all wanted to do, I would feel much more comfortable with asking the attorney his opinion on that question. So I don't feel comfortable answering that question tonight directly.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Karen or Alice, any thoughts or comments?
No, I think it's a good plan. I think it's going to be fine.
Good. Annie, anything? Any thoughts? And Anthony or Shelby?
No.
Great. I agree with Karen. You know, I think that the overall idea of having housing available for somebody who's going to be running a farm and engaging in agricultural activity is it fits squarely within what our community desires as stated in the POCD. So I think it's all positive from my perspective without, you know, giving the approval tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, then, yeah, thanks for coming in and thanks for spending the time and explaining more about your ideas to us. And I don't think we need to do anything here except for say thanks, and we'll see you next month.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so then we can go into agenda item number 7. 7A is staff report, and 7A is discussion regarding preferred application process. And this, we can have a quick discussion. We can table this until next time at the pleasure of the commission, but we're really talking about the waivers and the discussion about the waivers, and that opened up another discussion about whether we should be opening in applications that require a public hearing. Should we be considering not opening the public hearing at the first meeting and talking about the application first without opening the public hearing, discussing the waivers, discussing what we might want to see extra? I believe that the applicant prior to the public hearing can tell us what they're thinking and give us some background of the application. We can have a discussion, then decide what we want to do, and then open the public hearing at the next meeting. And then after that, we wouldn't have opened the public hearing, so we'd have another 65 days to review it, and another 35 days to approve. So it might satisfy some of the concern that the meetings go too long because we're trying to do too much at every meeting. Ty, did I miss it? Did I leave anything out? Is that a reasonable?
Yeah,
enough?
no, I think you pretty much covered what, you know, you thought might be some of the solutions to some of the issues.
I would
Well,
say.
it makes sense to me, Matt, as you know. Anything that can keep us, on track. Sometimes the public hearing puts the cart before the horse, so to speak, if it comes first. So I like that idea.
What I see, the slight downside to what I see is I think that we should apply this across the board, whatever we
Yeah.
decide.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's public hearings that come, which are relatively simple, and we open the public hearing, we talk about them, we close them, and then we make a decision that night. So those applications we would require that they are at least 2 meetings, they at least go 1 meeting and then another meeting. But Ty says that we as a commission tend to move more quickly than others, than other towns, maybe.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of towns have planning and zoning separately, so you're referring these applications back and forth between commissions. So in your case, because you're combined, you're really going quite quickly as compared to a town that might have it separate. It's great for the applicants. They're getting very expedited treatment in Kent.
Well, are you suggesting that if we do it the way you just suggested, that it will actually make the duration of the application longer because the public hearing
Yeah.
gets started later? Is that?
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, so you'd pretty much guarantee at least 2-month process, if
2
not
months.
more, and then if there's still questions after the public hearing and it's held open, it can go,
Yeah.
several months.
Yeah.
So I suggest that we let this rattle around a bit. I'd rather not make a decision without Wes and Adam and Daryl here, right? So
Mhm.
and not to say that we should decide as a full commission if we're going to change our process a little bit. So does anybody have any questions about what we're talking about, or anything that they would like to know before we sort of move on and ruminate on this for a month? Okay, then. That's great. So I think that's a good initial discussion. We'll bring Adam and Wes and Daryl and Chris up to speed next time we're all together, and then maybe make a decision at our next meeting.
Does the board ever cap the participants' length of time they can publicly speak? Like a 5-minute time limit or a 3-minute time limit?
We have not in the past, Anthony. We generally monitor it pretty closely and ask that people make their points quickly and not rehash points that others have made. But we typically don't put a time limit on the amount of time that people can talk. We will cut them off though if they're going on and on.
Okay, understood.
Okay, Alice, unless you look like you're on the cusp of.
You gonna say something? Well, I was just thinking, let's noodle about this a little bit more, because Ty, I'll talk to you about, if you think about it in the last, say, 6 months, how many times would we have benefited by this new formula? It may not be as often as we think. It's just that when it really does get backed up, it gets real backed up kind of thing.
We've
So,
had a series of difficult meetings.
yeah,
and everybody's gotten tired.
Yeah.
Midnight is not fun, but it may not happen all that often.
Yeah, maybe it's worth going back and just really testing that. Okay.
All right, good. Okay, so then let's move on to report of officers and committees. I don't think there's any open committees. Ty, do you have any, there's nothing other than your staff report, right?
Yep, nope, nothing. Nothing else.
Okay, then we've got the agenda item number 9A, which is the administrative permits and certificates of compliance. And I don't have any questions on those, I don't think. Anybody else? And then, oh, sorry. Agenda item numbers 10 and 11. Is there any reason, Ty, to go into executive session?
Nothing new.
I will notice, it's probably been on here for forever, but agenda item number 11.
Mhm.
There is a misspelling. The C is transposed with the U. I went back to last month's agenda and it was the same way, so I suspect that it's a copy paste issue.
Oh, wow. It's probably been on there for a year.
Anyway, okay, so then I would say that agenda items 12 and 13 we can table. And then only an hour and 43 minutes in, can look for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I will second that.
Great, thanks y'all.
Wow, record time
Right.
for the second meeting tonight.
Well, Alice gave me a hard time after the last meeting. She said, Matt, midnight's too long.
Everybody have a
Good
good
night,
night.
everybody.
All right,
Okay.
take care.
Thank you.